Okay, Maria, you're good to go.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to all our members and guests. My name is Maria Gelanides, and I am this year's president of the DIA. The two key mandates of the Digital Imaging Association are to provide education and networking opportunities for our members. At this time, we have to forgo networking for everyone's safety, but I do hope you find the educational aspect worthwhile, and we look forward to your feedback. Our membership is comprised of pre-press, printers, packaging converters, designers, advertisers, print buyers, equipment, and consumable manufacturers and vendors. If you are with us as a guest, please consider joining the Digital Imaging Association. Today's session is an example of the high caliber meetings we run. If you would like more information on membership, please contact either myself or Marg McLeod at 416-254-4941 or marg@digitalimagingassociation.com. Like most trade associations today, financial stability does not come from the membership revenues alone. And so we turn to the vendor suppliers to support our goals as an association. We are honored to continue to receive the support and recognition of the DIA's contribution to the growth and development of the graphic imaging sciences industry from the following companies. Our platinum sponsors: Canon, HP, Konica Minolta, Spicers, Swiss Q Print, Trinet Global Logistics. Our gold sponsors: Adobe, Fujifilm, Graphics Canada, Kodak, Heidelberg, and our silver sponsor, Sydney Stone. Please consider these companies and their demonstrated support of the industry when making your purchasing decisions. Technology for this webinar has been generously provided by HP. Our moderator for today's session is Stephen Longmire, National Sales Manager, Sydney Stone, a silver level DIA sponsor. Stephen's role includes researching new product lines and manufacturers to distribute, setting pricing structures, managing the partner program, and conceiving and implementing marketing initiatives to support sales efforts. Stephen has served on the DIA board for 6 years, including the last 2 as president. Stephen, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you very much, Maria. Today's topic is the big shift. The big shift, the hyper-personalization of marketing. So hyper-personalization and what it means for printers. In the days of mass mailings, print drove direct marketing, and personalization was using a prospect's name or purchase history. Today, the hyper-personalization customer experience is driven by digital fact gathering, such as browsing behavior, in-application behavior, and engagement data to interpret a customer's intent. With the face of this $8 billion US market changing so dramatically, what opportunities exist for printers? Printers already have the equipment. What is needed is the ability to create software to help customers who are traveling down the hyper-personalization path. A terrific learning opportunity is being presented by 3 leaders in the direct business as they discuss how hyper-personalization works, what challenges it presents for marketers, and where printers can create a niche helping these marketers without having to purchase equipment themselves. Our panelists today are Doris Brown-McNally, Worldwide Brand Innovation Partner Development Manager with HP Incorporated. In her role as Global Brands Innovation Manager, Doris is responsible for fostering relationships with many of the world's most recognizable brands and their creative agencies through meaningful and inspirational digital print instruction and campaign development. Doris built her career on a solid foundation with a degree in print production from the Rochester Institute of Technology. And for close to 40 years, Doris has been recognized in the printing, textile, and plastics industry as one of the foremost experts on color, crucial in corporate branding and identity. Her greatest strengths are her passion, creativity, drive, and leadership. She thrives on challenges, particularly those that expand the company's reach. Thank you for joining us today, Doris. Next, we have Eleanor Rafter. Eleanor is the Director of Smart Mail Marketing Channels for Canada Post. As part of the direct mail line of business at Canada Post, Eleanor is part of the senior team that champions the enduring power of direct mail as a business builder for marketers in Canada. Eleanor has 25 years of experience in direct marketing, helping marketers acquire and retain customers with a focus on all business segments, including enterprise and small and medium-sized businesses. She develops channel partnerships within the direct mail ecosystem and is an advocate for the mail industry and the power of working together to sustain the mail business in Canada. Eleanor has experience in business marketing and prior to joining Canada Post, focused on business development strategies in out-of-home advertising. Eleanor is also passionate in finding solutions within the industry to create sustainable mail. Thank you for joining us today, Eleanor. And finally, we have Steve Falk, who is president of Prime Data. Prime Data is a DM specialist in personalizing printed advertising communication, and Prime Data recently became one of the select group of direct mail and print providers to win a Canada Post Wings of Leadership Award. Canada Post has expanded Wings of Leadership Award to recognize the contribution of innovation, collaboration, and growth by one of their 35 certified expert partners. Prime Data is an expert partner since the program began and chose in particular for the innovation of its responsive print TM product. It's a programmable mail solution that was piloted with Wayfair and Sephora, resulting in white papers showcasing the positive outcomes of this initiative. Thank you, Steve, for joining us today. Now, I'd like to encourage all of our attendees today who are listening to this program to please feel free to submit questions to the panelists. You can either address your question to a particular panelist by specifying their name in your question, or if you have a question that is unspecified, I'll present it to the panel as a whole. So thank you for our attendees today as well, and thank you for our panelists for joining us today. Before we begin on individual presentations, I'd like to kind of ask a question to the panel as a whole so we can explain it to our attendees as well. What is the definition of hyper-personalization? And basically, how many layers of data would be required to become a hyper-personalized versus just the traditional personalization? And I'll open it up to the panel as a whole.
Doris, why don't you go ahead, because you can kind of represent a number of perspectives there.
Well, personalization, it comes in all different formats. I think that it comes in the use of an individual's name, an individual's information that they've shared with you, but it also comes in the visuals that might be used from package decoration, even into product decoration for general commercial print. So hyper-customization is the term of using all of these data points in a way that engages with the person who's receiving the product in a way that connects with them better. It's not just using one component, it's using multiple components, and it's using it in intelligent manners. You'll hear through some of the presentation today different examples of how it's used for direct mail and others, but it's a bigger subject than just a person's name. And I think that's the biggest takeaway I would say to everybody in this audience today, because I think most people are just focused on an individual person's name. It's much bigger than that.
Eleanor, do you have anything to add to that as well? Do you like?
Yeah, no, I think, as Doris said, we're seeing a lot more, when we talk about hyper-personalization, I think it's an expectation from consumers now. I think it's really driven by the consumer demand, and marketers are certainly investing more in what that would look like for their particular business and industry. But it's not easy. I think if it was easy, we would have seen this a lot more in terms of personalized pieces throughout the years. And we've got some verticals that do it very well and are well versed in how they take their data and use that data for personalization. And there are other industries that are just getting into this space. So it is something that is again driven by, I think, the marketer's need, who is driven by the consumers, their demand for receiving relevant, timely information that's customized to their needs and wants.
Steve?
And I would just add that, of course, it seems to be like a response to the fact that we have high-speed color printers these days that are digital. So we can take that data and, for instance, if 20 years ago we wanted to do a French and an English version and another version for Saskatchewan, we would print 3 static versions, and now we can kind of look at it and go, well, this is a variable print job, so why don't we change up the versions as we print instead of doing separate ones, and when it makes sense volume-wise. And then it might be, oh, well, now that I'm already putting different versions together, why can't I change images, and why shouldn't I change, phone numbers, call to actions and stuff for these different marketplaces and segments, because it's just digital. So I think it's really reacting to the fact that digital printing just allowed you to have all of that flexibility, which wasn't available economically before.
Even if I may add, actually, I have some statistics. I pulled them up while we were talking because I think Eleanor made me think about this. You know, statistically, baby boomers, that's the people who were born from 1946 to 1964, their expectation of personalization is like at 26%. Generation X, which is 1965 to 1979, is about 32%. Millennials is 45%. Gen Zs are 53%. And they're already estimating that Gen As, which are the people who are born between the ages or the year of 2012 and 2025, is going to be 70%. So the concept of personalization isn't, I like coming to these sessions and having statistics, real information. There's a very clear indication here that if you're not getting yourself involved in personalization, that you're missing the boat, because the entire society is moving in that direction. So I apologize for coming back in with that, but I thought that might be relevant.
That's fantastic.
No, and you know, you just like, I think this conversation is kind of like that, where we're just going to bounce it around a bit and try and not have Stephen have to steer it all for us.
Good.
Trouble with it. But like the next thing that made me you made me think of was the personalization also means that you might be targeting a more sincere group, like the right target, rather than everyone, right? So you know, suddenly instead of saying, well, you know, my message is kind of general, so I'll just blanket these, pick a number, 100,000 people with this generic message, but instead you have like some people who have been long time buyers at your place, or you know, first time donors at your hospital, they're vegetarians and they don't need any meat, and you could like suddenly be very compact with this and economical with the way you're talking to people, and that can mean sometimes like mailing smarter and mailing less if you're talking in a direct mail world, which means you get just better results. Like every single time you message somebody, it's more specific to them. So instead of the response rate being 1 in 100, you might get 5 in 100 because you carved it down to being only 20% of that big universe. So when people say, well, what's the response rate? You're going to get better response rates when you carve down your group to the right people saying the right thing. I mean, that's one of the nice outcomes of hyper-personalization.
It's a great point. And actually, another thing, Steve, sorry, I know I'm almost sick myself. I'm not going to my next question, but a great point too, because traditionally gathering like personalization was name, address, postal code would be projecting household incomes based on that sort of data, maybe past purchasing behavior if you loop it to an existing customer. Now with all the digital aspects and little breadcrumbs we're leaving about our buyers' journeys on websites and things like this, we give much more information to a much more targeted printed piece. Like you mentioned, Steve, like the digital print engines, now you can do very small runs. Well, we're also having way more digital data points to actually drive to physical print as well, which is tremendous. So, yeah. Okay.
There was a question that popped up on my screen. I don't know if it's worth answering those as we go along or not, or how do we handle the chat? I don't know whether they were directing it directly at me or not. But.
No problem. This one's actually going to be specific to Eleanor. I'm actually going to incorporate this into Eleanor's presentation, if I may. So I'll roll that in, Chris Fraser will definitely answer that, but we'll park it for a little bit just for the time being, just to roll it into Eleanor's presentation. But duly noted, we are here. I'll ask the panel, what is driving the move to hyper-personalization? We touched on it a bit, increased response rates, smaller runs, smarter runs. Are there any sort of other moves? Doris also mentioned in terms of the generational shift towards it. Is there anything in addition to that?
Or you just touched on it in terms of the availability of data. Like, I don't think, I thought I saw a stat recently that, was 90% of the data in the world today has been created in the last couple of years. So I think there's just been a wealth of data that's been consumed, and it's all, as you said, Stephen mentioned, in terms of your online behavior is really driving a lot of marketers to be able to gather that data and what customers are looking for, where they're browsing, what information they're looking for. I think the challenge will be, from a personalization perspective, is how do you take all of that data from all of the various channels. So whether you're going into a retail store, you've got a loyalty card, you go online, you fill out your name and information to download a video, say on YouTube, like they have access to this whole wealth of data. It's then taking the the information and being able to craft a message that's, you know, consistent across all channels. And that could even be the same for packaging. Like you're talking to one consumer who may engage with media in so many different ways, online, digital, social, and then at the end of the day might be through e-commerce. So I think that's what marketers are finding challenging, is before we didn't have enough data, now they have so much of it, is what do they do with it and how do they optimize that data to Steve's point earlier on, to really hone in on the message and on the audience that they want to speak to.
I think personalization also allows you, when pieces are more personalized, it allows us to do sometimes better measurement of the response rates. All right, so once again, if you like send a generic piece out to everybody, you're not, you know, you have difficulty imagining how you might put different promo codes back, QR codes to bring people back that you could then track and measure and see who the people are. And I believe that marketers nowadays are so used to being able to measure the attribution, you know, of different kinds of marketing channels, that suddenly with hyper-personalization, you're allowed to also go, oh, by the way, when you do come back, use this promo code, or when you come back, use this link to get here. And that allows people to measure. So hyper-personalization, you know, we've been checking off reasons why it works. Well, marketers are used to being able to see measurable tracing results from the other channels. So why not printed channels as well, which is, you know, one of the benefits of it. I think I have one more too, if I may. I think another benefit of it is timeliness. Like you were saying, like what's driving personalization and hyper-personalization? Like you can actually now print digital messages and mail them within literally hours of something happening online, a trigger. And you know, when we used to think about non-hyper-personalized messages, we used to think of a fairly long timeline of design artwork, send it to printer, print hundreds of thousands of them, send them to a letter shop, wait for the mail service to deliver them. There'd be this long cycle. But with personalization and digital printing, you could literally imagine, and it's happening today. Something happens, you're sending the mail piece tomorrow.
Steve,
So
relevance is so important. I mean, there's this saying that content is king. Okay, if content is king, then context is God. Because what happens is that when you put that piece of information or that communication in the hands of the person at the right time, in the right place, in the situation that they wanted to be heard in, that's when you have connected with the consumer. And print is such a unique situation. And from all the studies I've been reading about Gen Zs and even millennials, they love the physical connection and the emotional connection that print has versus all the other mediums out there. So I think it's one of those things that those who understand this and are doing it in very smart ways, they're really seeing the success in uplift and ROI. And some of this projects I've worked on, you look at the return on investment, you go, oh my God, you know, I remember 10 years ago, you'd be happy with a 2 or 3% response rate. I'm seeing double-digit response rates in many of these cases because of educated, intelligent use of marketing and communication. So I'm excited. It's a very exciting time for people who understand.
Absolutely. I love that, because print being dead as an actual like marketing medium is not the case. It just has to be targeted and leveraged with digital information to then make it more relevant and topical, for sure. I'd like to ask the panel also too, we've kind of referred to omni-channel marketing. If we can touch on what, in fact, omni-channel marketing is for our attendees as well.
To respond to that one, because I think, you know, we get asked that a lot, even from marketers. They're trying to understand when people talk about omni-channel, it can mean so many things to so many people. But I like to put it in you know, a scenario. So, and that can kind of explain the ways that marketers are looking at omni-channel experience. And one would be, for example, it's a home renovation. You want to install a backsplash. That consumer then receives a flyer from a home hardware store that shows all the new backsplashes that are on trend. That will prompt you to go into Pinterest to get ideas. And when you're in there, you see an online video that shows you how to install the backsplash. But of course, you had to give in your contact information to get access to the data. That then prompts a personalized email to you a few days later saying there's, say, 20% off the tiles that you were looking at. You go to your cart, so you go online to your shopping cart, and you get distracted. So you get as far as, putting your information in the shopping cart, something distracts you and you walk away. But 2 days later, and this is where, Steve, you were talking about the trigger part, 2 days later, you get a postcard that's addressed to you to remind you to go back into the cart and complete your order. Then you go to the home hardware store or whatever, and you get an alert on your mobile phone as you're going down the aisles to say, hey, don't forget there's 10% off hammers, or some kind of other tool that you might need for the job that you're doing. So that to me explains what an omni-channel experience from a marketer's perspective. Like, it's kind of what marketers are aspiring to do. Because throughout that entire experience, you have the same creative, you've got the same look and feel, and they've got your name, you've got your address and your physical address and your email address, and all of those channels, like, it's it's orchestrated in a way that makes sense to what the customer journey is in terms of getting that customer into the store. So to me, that's what an omni-channel experience is. It's what marketers are aspiring to create, but it's not easy. But it is something that I'm seeing more and more, that's what they're attempting to do.
It's almost like a digital choose your own adventure book, in a sense, in the way that it's an action triggers an event, or then different action creates a different event. So you have to almost wire diagram out the entire customer journey to have actions and triggers of what message will correspond with which. I've experienced some just in my personal shop where they've been disjointed, and it's a real negative experience. So it does take some planning to get everything aligned ahead of time to make it an enjoyable experience. But yeah, you're right, Eleanor. When it's done right, when it's done properly, it's fantastic results. So.
You can see where mail kind of fit in within that experience. Like, it has a place to start with acquisition in terms of getting the attention of the consumer, and it has a place to start once you get the name. And when we talk about hyper-personalization, now it can be loyalty, it can be driving them to the store. It's got a lot of application.
Sorry, Steve, you were gonna.
Well, I was going to say, one of the things that I find it's important to tell people, because if you're a digital marketer, so if you're an omni-channel world, if you're a digital marketer, means, oh, I'm using several digital channels, and paper usually isn't one of the channels that's in their mind, right? And so a smart digital marketer, because digital marketing tends to have a fairly low cost to entry, right? And a lot of times you can learn to use those entry points pretty quickly. So you can then maximize your budgets in these digital channels. And I think one of the important things to put people at ease about is we're not trying to replace any of those low-cost digital channels, which when optimized work great. But to say that there are other channels, just like there's TV, radio, billboards, there's hyper-personalized things that can arrive in your house, and they have a right place. So let's say you maximize your email, graph looks like this, but then it starts to taper off and flatten out because you can't send any more emails and get response. But then you try SMS messages, and those taper off because you don't have that many people's cell phone numbers. You're like, where else do I go? Well, now you have a hyper-personalized channel that you can send mail in. We're not going to say that that line keeps going up forever as far as success, but also you want to build on each channel and bring in the best that it can bring to your audience in the right place. And you're right about customer journey mapping, etc. But once you've maximized your digital only channels, that's when you look at other channels and say, hey, what can I do to bring in some more action with my /donors, plus customers, etc. But you've got to think of it in that time, because otherwise people can sometimes think we're trying to say, oh, this must be better than digital. But it's like, no, it's one of the things that works in conjunction with, as a partner amongst all your channels.
Mm-hmm. Especially the more niche you go down that customer journey, the more customized that printed piece could be. Like I did a whole sort of bit of a case study involving an outdoor supply company going all through ice climbing and all this, going all the way down and then not checking out. Well, what a printed customized piece of that niche outdoor activity arriving in the mailbox would do to trigger someone to go back and re-engage, because you're not going to walk into a typical outdoor store and find crampons and all these types of things. So it can be, the printed piece can really, really enforce and re-engage that customer for sure.
Yeah.
We have a question that came in from one of our attendees, and I'll go to this just before we jump into to Eleanor's presentation here. The question was, how does this hyper-personalization data collection and tracking work with people who do not wish to participate? With digital marketing, there's a clear way to unsubscribe or opt out, whereas the mailed piece does not have the same option. Now, before I pose that question to the panel, there are opt-ins obviously for outbound digital communication, but even with like programmatic digital along your sale journey, there isn't an opt-in to receive that. So you can be even receiving digital messaging without opting in, where it'll start to superimpose ads on different websites you go to. But in terms of the mailed piece not having the same option, I'll open that to the panel as well too.
I have.
Steve.
I've seen people put the options in, like the smartest 1% will put in the options. Do you want to receive? What are your favorite channels and how do you mind receiving? So there are places, some people are dealing with that. So I have seen it, but currently, because you're not restricted by Castle or other things, you can send a mail piece out. I don't see there's if you're working with people who already think that your brand is fantastic, you have their home address because you've done something with them, you've sold them something, you've had a relationship, you sell them insurance, whatever it is. My guess is they're not going to take great offense to you marketing to them with something that's helpful. And if you are causing offense, you shouldn't be doing it. Like you're sending the wrong kind of message to the wrong person.
Well, and you're right. And if it's personalized to what their experience, it's not really going to be offensive because it is going to be targeted their past behavior anyway. So it's not going to be like totally out of context either. So,
and I try to figure out, and some people try to say, well, people don't want that in their mailbox. And my argument to this is people don't want it on their cell phone or their computer because literally they bought the computer and the cell phone and the data plan, and you're cruising in on their data. You're interrupting their life and using their data to make your message. Whereas the mailbox, you paid for the whole thing. I mean, literally, you paid for it to come to their mailbox, printing it and delivery. So you've taken the action of thinking it was worthwhile reaching out to them. And they can't really say, well, you shouldn't have spent that money on me. Like, the marketer spent the effort to get it there. So I think there's people who are being marketed to, they may not know it in that kind of logical fashion, but that's why they don't take such exception to a piece of mail as they would to their digital world being interrupted.
And I have seen marketers where they'll put it in there, as you said, Steve, like the smart marketers will put it in there and say, if you want to unsubscribe, here's the way to do it. So they do give the option. And that's, I think, one of the, when we talk to marketers about data accuracy and making sure, like, you go through your data, you scrub it, you look at when was the last time they purchased, is the message relevant to them? Because if the message is relevant to them, then it won't be seen as wasteful. It's just if they're sending it to to an address where that person may have moved and they haven't cleaned up their data, there's a lot to do with data cleansing, data accuracy. I see some marketers who do it really well and others who it's quite poor. And you put them through a data accuracy tool and you find that their accuracy rate is so high because they haven't taken the time to actually go in and do their due diligence on making sure that that contact is the right contact or is still a valid contact.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Perfect. At this point, I'd like to turn the floor over to Eleanor, who has a presentation on the value of personalization.
Thank you, Stephen. So I think we talked a lot about personalization coming up, and in terms of, when I talk about personalization, the power of personalization, what does it mean to me? And I think, again, just to reiterate that the whole digital world has really fostered this proliferation of data, but it's also fundamentally transformed how we live. And Doris talked about the generational differences and how that is changing and morphing over the generations. So it's here to stay. Now it's just a case of how do we do this and how do we do it effectively? It's also what consumers are conditioned to expect. So if you're like me, I've got, I subscribe to Netflix, Amazon, and you can see that already. There's tailored experiences there, and it personalizes the tool based on, your usage or what you watch. So it's something that consumers are conditioned, as they say, to expect. And one of the things I like to do is validate through data, just like Doris. I was looking up for some statistics to kind of validate these assumptions. And I found one study that showed that 78% of marketers claim that personalized DM is a highly effective channel versus non-personalized DM. So from a marketer's perspective, they definitely see the value. But another one, which I thought was quite interesting, is that personalized mail increases the response rates by more than 500% over non-personalized mail. That was another study, with an average improvement of 50% for personalized multi-channel campaigns. So that's the attribution factors, like when you bring in other channels to support your campaigns, that also adds, you know, a better response rate for customers. So I think the proof point is there. Of course, the challenge is always on how do you execute? And, you know, I talked about this already, about data accuracy is key, and access to data. Canada Post for the last couple of years, and for those of you who have, you know, worked with Canada Post, we've put a lot of time investing in targeting and data services for customers. I think the challenge from an address perspective is our lists in Canada aren't as good as those in the US. So we do have a challenge in getting access to lists. But there's a lot of emphasis on finding where customers are now building out CRM, so customer relationship management systems, and these CDPs where they house all their data. So they're trying to figure out how do they mine this data so that they can build a personalized experience across all channels, not just for DM. And some, as I say, do it well, and some are quite challenged to do it. When we look at, you know, some of the other pieces of education that we do is helping marketers. One is to access the data, clean the data, but also build profiles around their existing customer segments. You know, one of the things we do is a profile analysis on. It's amazing how many of our marketers don't have a persona or don't know who their end customers are, what they look like, what kind of demographic information do they have there. You know, are they, you know, in terms of income, any kind of demographic insight that could help them then target for new businesses. So we, you know, work with them on tools to figure out how do you build that persona base, or how do you build that customer profile. So when you do get that information, it helps you craft your message to the right people based on what you understand of their makeup. So it's, you know, it's difficult. I think it can be quite daunting for those customers who may not be as data savvy. But it really is what, you know, data is really what powers personalization. And the other piece, I think, that we've seen over the last 2 years is how COVID has really brought the importance of retaining existing customers, and that, you know, customers expect to be connected in a way that brings value to them. And when I say value, it could be either helping them solve a problem. That customer might be online looking for something, and you can see that on their online behavior, so you help them solve it. Or you can be proactive and, you know, send information to them that they may need. So I really think there's an opportunity for us, this industry. I think we can provide support and leadership to help these customers understand how personalization can work for them, and you know, how to apply all the data that they get either online, and they can communicate either in a physical or a digital way. It's what they're looking for, and I think print is a medium where this can, you know, bring all of that to life.
That's perfect. Eleanor, I have one question for you here in terms of when it comes to packaging and sustainability, what is important for printers to know?
So one of the things that we looked at with packaging, and we're putting a lot of it, I'm hoping that some people on the call would have seen the Canada Post sustainability report, but we're putting a lot of emphasis into sustainability. And I think as e-commerce grows, it's becoming more of an issue with consumers. I'm sure if you walk down your street on garbage day, you can see all the Amazon boxes out there, and it's really getting heightened through COVID that this is a concern. We did a study last year to really talk about you know, packaging and what it means to the consumer. And you know, one of the stats we found from that is 42% of Canadians say they're concerned about the environmental impact of e-commerce. Another 37% of Canadians are more likely to shop with retailers that are focused on reducing their carbon footprint. So I think that's really, really important to know. And then another 63% are upset when retailers use excessive or unnecessary packaging when shipping purchases. So that was a study that we felt we needed to do, given the whole explosion of e-commerce, especially over COVID. There is a heightened sensitivity to packaging and its impact on the environment, and they're looking for that shipper, that retailer, to really take note and come up with innovative ways either to reduce their packaging or the packaging that they're using, ensure that it's coming from sustainability material or sustainable materials.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Eleanor. At this point, I'd like to turn the table over to Doris. If you wouldn't mind, Doris has a presentation here that she's going to show on some of the examples of personalization, some major brands who've utilized this and leveraged it to their benefit.
So Eleanor has talked a lot about direct mail, and we talked a little bit about omnichannel, but I want to take personalization outside of just what we consider to be traditional direct mail and talk about some executions that I've seen have used personalization in really amazing ways. Elle Magazine, which is a part of the Hearst organization, knew that they had Kim Kardashian coming up on one of their magazines. And rather than just paying all that money to have her on the cover, they wanted to use it in an intelligent way to connect with their existing subscribers. So working with them, what we did is we talked to them about getting Kim to take her typeface or her handwriting and turn into a typeface, craft about 20 or 30 different messages, and every single subscriber who received that magazine that month received a personalized message from Kim Kardashian. Now, just think about that from a business perspective. All of us had subscriptions, and after the first year, we usually let them go dead. If you had the potential of getting personalized covers from specific entertainers or influencers, you might want to retain a relationship from a subscription base with a publisher. So this has been a very successful use of personalization by Hearst for their one magazine. And I expect you'll probably see more of this going forward because it is a way of creating a collectible in the eyes of the consumer who receives it. We've also worked with companies like Nestlé's with KitKat, where they've worked with co-creation. And what co-creation means, you're hearing all these new terms if you're in the printing world, but this is where the consumer has the ability to offer content, imagery, materials, and then that is put onto the package decoration as some kind of work. Now, it could be personal, where you do personal orders right online, or it could be something that actually gets distributed into the larger ecosphere of the consumer. And this is all personalized pieces of execution that are showing a connection between the brand and also the consumer. Another one is during COVID, Kellogg's did this in Europe, where they allowed children who were going back to school and getting ready for school. These were self-affirmations where they would get their cereal box and their picture would be on the front, and then there'd be copy on the back and all kinds of interactive activities through QR codes and through augmented reality where the child could actually interact with the brand. Once again, a very relevant journey for this consumer and right in the sweet spot of where this consumer has a high expectation of hearing directly from the brands. They're creating the new heritage brands. Campbell's Soup to me is a heritage brand for me, but to a child this age, they're creating and formulating those new relationships with these people. Another example here is something lovely. Lay's has been supporting the Cleft Palate Association for years. And every year you'll go into the store and you'll see these kind of executions. And a portion of the proceeds of the bag actually go back to the Cleft Palate Association, and doctors go around the world repairing children's lips. Well, what they did 2 years ago was they enabled consumers to be able to upload their own photographs and create their own bags. And of course, these bags are expensive. You know, a typical bag of potato chips might be $5. This might be $10, $12, and the portions of the monies go back to a cause. So this is connecting personalization with a cause marketing flavor. And once again, bravo to them for doing this, and it's gained them a lot of attention in the marketplace. I'm rattling through a few of these because I'm just giving you inspiration, because it's not just direct mail. Personalization cuts across all executions. Here's an example. This is actually personal to me. That's my dog. That's Clancy. And Purina allows you to go online. You answer a few questions about your dog. What breed is it? What age is it? Is it overweight? What is it like to eat right now? And then you receive this bag. After you purchase this bag, you receive a picture of your dog on the front of the bag when you upload it. It names it the name of the dog, and then the copy on the back is written brilliantly. Hi, Doris. Thank you for introducing us to Clancy. If you feed Clancy this mix at this level for these few days, you're going to see him taking laps around the dog park. wonderful, wonderful, engaging copy. And that's what it really, when you deal with proper personalization, it taxes everybody in the design chain to come up with really innovative ways. Other examples, Nutella. This is visual personalization. This is hyper customization. HP has a solution called HP SmartStream Mosaic. We take one piece of artwork, and from that one piece of artwork, we can create billions of pieces of artwork where the designer doesn't have to touch one file at all. It all happens through an algorithm. This is an execution that Nutella did, and they've done this numerous times in different geographies. And another example is here. This is Diageo Smirnoff. They did this for the Pride Month, where they had 21 heads. This was the 21 vodka. They had 21 heads, 21 bodies, 21 backgrounds. And what happens is the software just mixes and matches, and no two bottles were alike. This is pure hyper customization, hyper personalization. And what happens is when people went into the store to purchase these items, they were not just purchasing one, they were purchasing cases. They recognized the value of it being a collectible. And that is the big thing going forward. So I hope I've been able to at least expand beyond just direct mail, the concept of personalization being used in an omni-channel execution.
Perfect. No, thanks so much, Doris. Thank you for that. At this point, I'd like to turn the floor over to Steve. Steve, if you wouldn't mind taking over and bringing us home, so to speak.
What we've been working on is trying to make the factor of time to be so, to bring it to its how important time is in the whole marketing spectrum by reacting to things that happen online or in a customer journey and mailing right away. Time isn't something that most people think about a lot in direct mail, but I'll give you a simple example. If you try to sell winter boots in the summer, it's the wrong time. And if you just define narrower and narrower the right time to be sending a marketing message, it's often triggered by somebody's digital visit. They either came to your store, joined your loyalty program, left something in the shopping cart. They did, bought their first insurance policy, bought their first car, came and test drove a car. We can identify markers in time. A lot of marketers miss the fact that time is often the most important thing to capture. And they certainly don't associate capturing time with print. Because, in the old days, what we used to do is, we'd take a piece of paper and a pen and we'd say, thank you for visiting us today. It was lovely to see you. I can't wait for our next visit. We'd mail that sucker. And we knew that capturing the moment of time and saying, thank you for that gift. It was great. To do it right away was important. Our mothers all told us, say thank you quickly and respond. But now we can do that with print. So, there are many examples. In the States, there's several companies who are looking for venture capital funding and expanding their idea that we should be able to take data and put it into the mail stream really quickly and personalized. And really, this is paralleling what we've been doing as digital marketers, right? So if somebody does something, we send them a thank you note. They give to a charity, we send them a generic piece of email saying thanks for supporting the charity. Where the trick comes in explaining to somebody why there's value there, because of course there's an associated, well, first of all, isn't it hard and expensive to run print? And isn't it hard to make it fast? And what real value does it add when I can do it so cheaply via email? Then the proof is in the pudding. We did some case studies, as you mentioned at the beginning, with digital marketers like Sephora and Wayfair, who are just masters at their craft. I mean, there's almost the business alone was built upon the idea that we could master the universe through digital marketing, and that we could do all the sales we want. They realized after a couple of years that they had to play in different environments. They, buy billboards. They plaster the side of trucks. Their branding is all over the place. And they also decided that they should, even though they were already sending emails in different parts of the customer journey, to try and print. And what they found is, because we helped them with 50-50 studies, A/B this and see what happens after a couple of months, they were able to find that considerable amount of new revenue, new engagement online was attributed to the group that got paper. And if we're here talking about hyper-personalization in marketing, and there's other hyper-personalization we've talked about in packaging and otherwise, from a marketing standpoint, that's what people want to measure these days. They want to be able to say, can I justify the cost of spending print and mail and setting up the infrastructure and thinking through the customer journeys? Can I justify that? And how do I measure it? And it's measurable now. Campaigns can be set up that do that. And what we find in the right situations, high value relationships that exist already with customers, it can help cut down churn. It can help cut down people abandoning the process partway, and it really can engage people where they feel more part of the brand. So if there's one thing I'd like to, message I'd like to leave with people is why timeliness is now so, captured or able to be captured through hyper-personalization.
Great point, Steve. I do have a question for you, kind of definitely to bring some of our attendees in. I wonder if you could say an example of a variable print job that small or mid-sized printers could produce and kind of capture into the subject matter of today's discussion. Because some of them might from the onset think it's too daunting. There might be too large, big brands, multinational campaigns, but there are definitely some availabilities for small to mid-sized printers to get involved, are there not?
Yeah, I noticed that was one of the questions that came earlier, right? So I luckily had some time to think about it. So there's a number of ways to deal with this. Is if you're a small to mid-sized printer and somebody comes up with an idea for this, there are basically trade shops out there that can help you do it. So let's say that, like if a bigger print job came in and you weren't going to do it, you were thinking, hey, I need to find a trade partner. You can find trade partners across Canada who are decent if the size is too big for you. But if you're thinking, this looks like the kind of thing I could do, I think you want to at least have done the legwork in advance of looking at some software that sometimes is just kicking around your office. Like if you've got InDesign in the office, you could use InDesign and a quick plugin, or even some of the simple things that come if you've got a printer that you bought from one of the major brands. Sometimes they'll throw in software like Fusion Pro or something like that, or you got it bundled up. These are all pieces of software that allow you to put names and addresses and images into variable print. And, best thing to do is to try some of this stuff out in advance. You got a bit of a quiet week one day and you sit down with your graphic designer and you've got a little spreadsheet of some names and addresses, and you're like, what could we do here? More than just names and addresses. And, like a typical one might be wedding invitations. Somebody might say, well, I really want to do these 100 wedding invitations. It's nice to not have just 10 people at my wedding now that COVID's letting up. And they might take those wedding invitations statically and take them back to their friend who's got really good handwriting, whereas you could suddenly turn a wedding invitation job into a personalization job with handwriting fonts and an Excel spreadsheet of the guests. And sometimes people are even doing this with online tools where web to print allows them to have variable print jobs. So if you're part of one of the chains that has web to print and your client says, hey, I want to do a set of postcards to remind people to come to my, let's name anything that you should do that's a local business that has to have recurring visits. Audiology, eyewear, car mechanic, help me out, guys. What other ones are there out there? Like, so these kinds of businesses, where you technically you're supposed to come back every year or something to get your checkups, right? These guys want to see recurring revenue, and they walk in your store, they're getting other things printed, and you talk to them about doing maybe a monthly mailing where you remind people this is the month that you should be booking your appointment for next month because your 1-year anniversary is up. Your oil changes need to be done. These kinds of variable print jobs can be done fairly easily. They can be hyper-personalized. They can have male or female or language designations. The other one that I thought of too, and when you're thinking about this, you might as well have learned this part of it, is there's an awful lot of people using hyper-personalization or the variable print technology that we're talking about strictly from a marketing standpoint to do something as simple as print tickets or labels that are sequenced. Barcode labels, QR code labels. When we look at research of who's searching the words of variable print, there's an awful lot of people using it for very mechanical things. Shipping labels. Couriers need labels they can peel off and put on things, and you need to know variable print technology to be able to do that. So although it doesn't fit like hyper-personalization from a marketing standpoint, the same software, the same printer, maybe you're changing stock substrate to printed labels instead of paper. That sort of applies. So those are the things that came to mind right away, Stephen.
Oh, I appreciate that. I'd like actually to kind of delve a little bit into the software that is required for these. I'll start with Steve, and then maybe I'll move to Eleanor and Doris as well, because they're all differently leveraged. But we can start to Steve. What kind of software and data processing is involved? It will be required for a printer to utilize in this case.
Yeah, so once again, I'll mention that don't be shy to find a partner who might do the software side for you. There's a number of people out there, like even some of the big insurance companies and banks, they outsource the software processing for the printers they've got in-house, right? So you can imagine you're a small printer and you've got some digital printing capability, but boy, you just don't have this. You'll find a partner, and that's possible. But if you needed to do it in-house, or you wanted to experiment and you thought, hey, I can invest in that, and I've got some people who are inclined to learning that stuff, you could start with just Word. Word is a decent way to merge a document to an Excel. Like you can write letters, you can do invitations, you can do a lot of things with Word. It's an incredibly powerful word merge from an Excel file. But things get complicated after you start doing a few hundred, because suddenly now, like Eleanor mentioned, you want to address correct. You want to find if people have moved. Once again, you do have partners for that out there. If you're doing this 6 times a year, you may not want to become a data expert. So you could look to anybody from, I believe Canada Post has some services, to one of their 35 expert partners across the country who all have data services of one type or another, could clean those files, update them, find the people who've moved, create accuracy. So if you didn't want to buy a piece of software called Address Corrector, and there's a number of them out there in the marketplace, and pay an annual licensing fee, you could buy individual a la carte sort of as you need it. But then you can have anything, like there's a Canadian software called Objective Loon, and they have a number of products from fairly industrial strength to opening print shop kind of strength. There's, I think I mentioned Fusion Pro. There might be one called Digimerge. And then always look to your web to print supplier, because if you're using web to print, there may be built in the back end of your web to print some functionality to be able to design. I've seen this in a number of places where, if you follow the design a postcard thing through your web to print, it says upload Excel spreadsheet here. And you're like, oh, well, there I could just do a mail merge right there inside existing software that, I'm thinking of brands here where maybe like Allegra, Quick Copy Printing, UPS, like if those are locations all have access to one web to print tool, then there may be variable printing stuff built into that.
That's a good point, because I find that a lot of print companies utilize a very small percentage of the capabilities of some of the software programs that they already have available to them. They don't really like a 90% activation rate amongst their existing software is very rare. Usually it's a little bit here and they add another software package and keep bundling when they could actually sometimes use what they already are paying for.
Yeah, if you another way to think of it, if you've been in the print business long enough, you used to get files and then send them out so that they could be readied for a plate, right? You'd send get scans and stuff, right? Like I'm dating myself here, but there was an outsourced service so that you could bring it back in and run it ink onto paper. And you can literally do that with variable print as well. You could send the file out and then have it brought back in, and you can run it on your presses. So then you'd get all the stuff you need in high-res PDFs ready to go. You'd be the ink cutter, preparer of the job, but you wouldn't have to become the digital print, formation of the PDF expert. And you could also partner with somebody who's doing that. Like you may have an insurance company or a technology company or somebody who's like, every month I produce 1,000 statements. I need somebody to mail them. Now you're in the variable print business. You didn't know it, but you're printing 1,000 different ones. So now you need different quality controls because everyone's different. Do they have sequence numbers? How do I do a quality control to make sure I didn't miss one in the 1,000? So once you do become a variable print person, you also have to invent new ways to address the fact that everyone's different. So if I'm going to cut them and I do one wrong, can I reprint it? Do I know the sequence number? Can I find it again? So, there's things to be taken into consideration when you start moving from here's a big stack of everything being exactly the same to every single one is different.
Mhm. Perfect. Eleanor, do you have anything to add in terms of the list cleansing and things like that? Kind of Steve had alluded to some of the software that Canada Post may utilize and bring to bear.
Yeah, we have absolutely, like, we've got some software and we work with partners who actually that's their core competency, and there's tools that you can get online. We could direct you to other partners that can help do that for you, and we've got some services ourselves. So the data cleansing list management piece is definitely, if anybody wants to get more information on that, I can connect them with the people at Canada Post who know it better. But I do kind of want to just add on to what Steve was talking about. We're getting Canada Post, we get some inquiries from technology partners who want to be able to execute direct mail, and some of these are coming from the US, but they have the software, they are connecting with customers, or they're plugging into customer CRM platforms, and they're doing the creative, they're doing the, making sure that you've all the versions are got some control there, and they essentially are looking for somebody just to print. So there is a connection there that's required from those technology partners into that print business. And I know Steve can talk about this in more detail, like what's required there, but I hear from these technology partners that they'd like to see printers who are a little bit more invested in and knowledgeable around data, and how you can connect software or build software into your existing platform. So probably another conversation at another time. But if this is where the industry is going, if this is where we have to aspire to help those marketers build out this omni-channel, hyper-personalized space, I think there is an opportunity for the print industry to really understand, well, what would it take for me to kind of bolt into some of these new technologies that are coming out there, and see it as a way to differentiate yourself from other printers. It's an added service that I know marketers are looking for, and as you said earlier, consumers they expect. So I think there is an opportunity.
Doris, you're kind of in a different position in the terms of the data that is coming to you, working on with behalf of the printers to help. Do you find yourself utilizing outside services to help them manage and cleanse their lists or what have you, in terms of making the most effective and targeted campaigns possible?
I do, but I can also speak to the earlier question you posed about software that's available. So if you are a print service provider and you're using HP equipment, for example, we have a solution called SmartStream Designer. And in that SmartStream Designer, there's an attribute called Mosaic, which is hyper-customization. That is a free Adobe Illustrator, InDesign, Photoshop application. So what happens is a free application that opens up a huge opportunity of doing that hyper customization work, like that Nutella stuff, for free. And it's free to the designers, and it's free to the print service providers who have our equipment. We also, HP, and I'm sure others do too, but there are solutions within the print community. We have a solution called PrintOS, and we also have SiteFlow. And these open up capabilities for each one of the printers to be able to do a tremendous amount of new services to their clients. So I would say that if you're on this call and if you're a print service provider, it'd be maybe time to take a look at what services and what solutions are available to you in the solutions that you currently have or potentially looking to purchase. And if you're a brand or a creative possibly sitting in on this call, it's time for you to start thinking about having a different conversation with your print service provider. They're no longer just the people that offer you a quote on doing 1,000 pieces. They are a partner in crime. They have a tremendous amount of tools at their hands, and they have a network of people who can help them. That would be good for you to sit down and have the conversation. The last thing I would say is, and if you're a print service provider, if your salesmen are not talking in that manner to their clients, you need to have a conversation with your salespeople, because that is what my clients are asking me for right now. They're asking me for somebody to come in and be a consultative person and help them mitigate all the things that are going on with supply chain, with personalization, with sustainability. And our community is the best people to have. We're the leaders in this fight forward. So I think that it might be a good time to start to introduce or educate within your own organizations how you're promoting these things to your clients.
That's a great point. I could talk on the subject for quite some time. It's like the hour flew by. You guys were fantastic. I would very much like to thank Eleanor, Doris, and Steve for taking the time today. It was very informative. I really enjoyed myself. It was more like talking with a group of compatriots than any type of managing any sort of challenging situation. You guys were very collaborative. I really do appreciate your time. We'd like to thank our DIA Platinum sponsors today, Canon, HP, Konica Minolta, Spicers, Swiss Q Print, and Trinet Global Logistics. Our gold sponsors for the DIA is Adobe, Fujifilm, Graphics Canada, Kodak, and Heidelberg. Our silver sponsor is Sydney Stone, and the technology for today's webinar was graciously provided by HP. There we go. Be sure to mark your calendar for our next event, which is coming up Wednesday, April the 16th. The focus of that webinar will be the transition from offset to inkjet and an update on the current state of affairs. So I'd like to thank everyone. I'd also like to let everyone know that on behalf of our panelists today, we're going to be making a donation to the Don Gain Memorial Canadian Print Industries Association Scholarship Fund. So thank you for your time today. Greatly appreciate it. And thank you for all of our attendees. Have a great day.
Good day. Bye-bye.
Great panelists, if you could hang around for a few minutes. Record.